Hi, everybody. And once again, thank you so much for joining us for this discussion on cannabis insurance and the coverages that are often overlooked when purchasing a cannabis business insurance policy. I'm Jennifer Zalkin. I am the director of the NCRMA, and joining me is cannabis insurance subject matter expert, Thomas Cialetti. Tom has experience in many facets of the insurance industry and brings a broad spectrum of insight to both the NCRMA and Tricome, of which he is the chief underwriter and program manager. Having worked first as an agent and then in project management as an underwriter and product analyst, he understands the needs of both the insured and the insurer. His diverse experience has inspired him to create and manage insurance products that benefit the policyholder and promote sustainability within the cannabis industry. Tom, thanks for being with me here today.
Thanks for having me. Eager to highlight the coverages that are often overlooked when purchasing cannabis insurance policy and maybe provide some insight on how this might leave a business exposed to potential losses.
Awesome. So before we jump right in, I just want to let everybody know that we will be designating the last 10 to 15 minutes of this session for a live Q&A. So as we go through the discussion and questions arise, please feel free to send your questions through using the Q&A box for Tom to answer them. So Tom, it is my understanding that there's a broad range of insurance offerings and products out there, and those who purchase based on the minimum requirements may not fully be covering their business. Can you start by breaking down the three basic and most essential policies for cannabis businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's other insurance coverages that you can add to these depending on the specific needs of your business. But as a cannabis business owner, the big three, much like a regular commercial business, are going to be commercial property, general liability for premises, and a general liability for products and completed operations.
So of those three, what would you say is the most overlooked and least understood type of coverage?
So number one definitely has to be your products and completed operations liability. It's definitely the most overlooked and the least understood, and most questions that we get from new cannabis business owners, and questions relayed through their brokers as well, and conversations we've had with brokers, is that this is the coverage that seems to be the most questions that come through and has the least understanding. It's varying in business type as to what your product liability might be. So if you're a cultivator, a manufacturer of edibles and extracts, your liability is going to be a lot higher. Your exposure is going to be a lot more than a retail dispensary or delivery service. We've had lots of conversations with legal representatives who are dealing with some of the liability, product liability litigation that is happening. There hasn't been a ton of precedent set as far as legal liability within the cannabis space. So we're really pushing people to kind of analyze their own risk and get coverage for this, because even if you are not found to be liable for something, if you go to court for this, you're paying those legal costs out of pocket. Whereas if you have this coverage, you have this policy, the insurance company will help cover that legal costs, and then also, depending on your limits and depending on your policy, cover legal damages that you are found liable for due to your product. Again, it's very specific. This cannabis business policies, this is specific to cannabis. A lot of these policies will be written specific to cannabis, so it will be covering the cannabis product, whereas some of the other things might be more of a commercial insurance, very standard and not very specific to the cannabis policy or cannabis business. You don't want to be on the hook for these costs. You don't want to be the one where the precedent is set due to your liability, and then not only are you the one that's remembered for setting this precedent, but you also had to pay all of the damages and all of the legal fees out of pocket. What goes hand in hand with your product and completed operation coverage is an optional coverage that is offered through many policies, which is a product withdrawal expense coverage. It's usually limited by a sublimit. However, this helps cover expenses due to mandatory or voluntary recalls. You do a lot of testing as a cannabis business. You're required to send out for testing, and if they come back with something and you have product out, or something is found to be contaminated and you need to do a recall, the product withdrawal expense is a big thing for especially cultivators, manufacturers, that will help pay for extra expenses that go with recalling product, paying your employees overtime to help with that process. So definitely product and completed operations, a big one we get a lot of questions about, have a lot of conversations about it between brokers and customers.
And I do think that's an important one, especially in the aftermath now that we're still learning about and seeing of the major product recall that happened in the state of Michigan. So it's definitely, of importance for many reasons to really have business owners have a firm understanding over what this coverage is and what having it and versus not having it could mean. Because the reality is that it's happened and it will only continue happening. So after product liability coverage, what would you say is the second least utilized and understood?
That's probably the commercial property form that we see not so many of these businesses, particularly at the dispensary retail level, are really kind of utilizing or seeking out. They're seeking out the general liability premises portion, which is required in a lot of municipalities or states, counties. And those who do get it are sometimes limiting what they are covering. So we want to kind of emphasize that your commercial property is more than just your building and your business personal property. There's other coverages within that form that are available to a cannabis business owner that will help, make them whole in the event of a covered loss. So the two main coverages that you get with a commercial property insurance policy are your building coverage, covers your building, and then your business personal property, which is the contents within. However, this does not always cover everything within your building. Finished stock is a big part of the cannabis retailer. Finished stock on hand for a cultivator manufacturer as well, but specifically for the businesses like the dispensaries who are kind of overlooking or doing the bare minimum, they really want to look at making sure that finished stock is covered on a policy that they have or is an option for them. Because if you have business personal property limit, it doesn't always cover your stock. So when you're filling out an application, make sure that if there's an option to set a limit for stock, or if you know that you have a certain amount of stock on hand at any given time, to put that down so you can get coverage for it. So if you have a covered loss and you lose a significant amount of that saleable product that you have in storage on site and it's gone and you don't have coverage for that, you file your claim, you might get coverage for damage to your building, damage to some other property within there, but your coverage stock, you're out of pocket to replace that in order to, keep your doors open and keep moving your product. Another sort of optional coverage that isn't always requested or is overlooked is your business interruption and extra expense coverages. If you have a covered loss and you cannot operate at that location, or you need to do things to that location in order to, continue doing business interruption, it affords you money to pay expenses to keep your doors open. It helps you keep things moving. Extra expense is not always automatically included with the business interruption. Sometimes the policy will have it together. Sometimes you'll add business interruption and then also have to add an extra expense coverage. And what the extra expense does is those extra ones that would be not ordinary for you to continue operations if you need to move to a secondary location and you need more product, all those little extra things that don't normally are not normally included in your operations to continue. There's also a good amount of property enhancement coverages that can be purchased. They're usually grouped together with little sublimits and in a tiered fashion where you will have a sublimit level for that group of coverage that can be increased depending on your needs. Some of those are your accounts receivables, refrigerated goods. If you're someone who deals with edibles that require refrigeration, you have a covered loss where you lose the ability to refrigerate those goods and they spoil. Refrigerated goods spoilage is an important one, important coverage to have. Account receivables, if you have invoices that are payable to you and you have a loss that makes it difficult to collect on those, accounts receivables coverage will help you with that. We're working in a day and age where a lot of things are done through computers. You have data and processing and equipment coverages included in property enhancement. It includes hardware, software, processing equipment. Another one that's really big that is overlooked, sewer backup and overflow or discharge is included in many of those extra, those property enhancement coverages. Working in a cash business, cannabis is very much cash-based. We all know that there's a lot of problems with people finding banking whenever you're handling a lot of cash, counterfeit money or money orders. If you're a dispensary, if you are a more of a cultivation operation distributor, if you're handling large amounts of cash and then there's counterfeit money, you can get coverage for that. So those tiered property enhancements, I would really recommend you reviewing them with your broker, asking the questions, and especially if you are a retail dispensary, you walk into some of these dispensaries now, they're very fancy. They're like Apple stores. There's coverages in here for fine arts. If you are trying to set forth a very refined vibe in your dispensary and you have nice things in there, these are the extra coverages that you can get to cover those things in the event of a loss that is covered by your policy. So sort of shifting gears from the nicey nice stuff to the for the business operations side, a big one that is not understood and can be very confusing is equipment breakdown. This is not like your home warranty for your appliances. It's for a very specific mechanical machines in your business. So it'll keep, if there's an electrical surge, a rupture, a bursting, imploding from a well-maintained and operational piece of equipment, your heater, a boiler, electrical generator, large refrigeration equipment, a walk-in refrigerator for edibles, for extracts that need refrigeration. If there's a sudden accidental breakdown of that equipment and it's well-maintained, it can be covered by equipment breakdown. It's not something for your old rundown piece of equipment. This is if your business that has spent money to maintain this equipment, to buy new equipment. It's very important. It's not a terribly expensive coverage to have, but if you have these things on your premises, it's a great idea to keep it covered. And if you have regular maintenance on these things, it's a great idea to keep those receipts, have records of maintenance. So if you have a loss and you file a claim, you say, hey, I've kept my refrigerators, they're serviced every 6 months, then it makes it easier for you to file a claim. If you are a operation that has several locations, or you're moving product in and out from a distributor using your own or leased vehicle, your property in transit coverage is something that you would want to look into. So if it's going in between, you say you have 3 dispensaries and you need to move product, or you get a delivery in one place that needs to be broken up to several locations, this covers the property that is being transported. It does not cover any of the vehicles themselves. It also covers any of the business property that you may be moving. It doesn't have to be product. If you're doing an offsite event, a promotional event, you're doing, you're setting up a tent in some kind of festival in town to promote your local business, and you're really only transporting a table, signs, and stuff like that. It'll still protect its business property that's being transported. It'll cover it more than 100 feet from the premises. One of the hitches, it's got to be in a vehicle that is owned, leased, or operated by your business. So it's important to know it's not things that are being delivered by common carrier or being delivered by another business.
I was going to say, I think it's just a great point as somebody who has experience doing marketing for cannabis brands. You just don't think of your booth items and your promotional items as of value or similar value as your product. But once you get to the point where I don't know if anyone's been to MJ Biz, where you're transporting these mega screens and mega pieces, and you're really putting together quite a spectacle, and and it's costly, and it's integral to protect that as well.
Yeah. So again, that's a great point. If you're doing a trade show and you're transporting it in your own van because it's local, and you've paid to have a really fancy sign or promotional items that can be costly. If it's especially one of those larger events at MJ Biz, there's people handing out tons of promotional items. Property and transit coverage is a big one. So there's a lot of things within the commercial property policy that may not be ultra specific to cannabis businesses, but it's your retail business, your wholesale business that you need to be aware of, because you're still a business. Cannabis is a newer industry within a legal scope, but you're becoming you're a legitimate commercial business. You need to think about these things.
Absolutely. So what insurance piece, if any, has been seen as a requirement in certain states and municipalities across the board, but could also be better understood?
Yeah. So sort of jumping off that prior point is, the premises general liability is the one thing that we've seen be required. Had a lot of conversations. People are coming, I just want this because I need to get my license. It's very costly to get these things started up. You're paying a lot of fees. You're doing a lot of licensing. It's easy to think that I just need to get this to get my doors open. And it's understandable for sure, but you have to understand, you're a business in the traditional sense of the word. There's still a lot of people who view the cannabis industry as this alien creature that is brand new, and it's very hard to understand. But your general liability, your premises liability exposure is going to be very similar as a dispensary to any other retail store. It's not ultra specific to cannabis. If you have, day-to-day foot traffic, it's something that you really need to think about. We talk a lot about the product side, but the general liability is, I don't want to say more important, but is more looming. So you're starting up a cannabis retail business, let's say, and you purchased it, or you're leasing a building that used to be some other retail operation. So you have to understand what liability exposures they may have already managed or neglect for the premises. So if you're renovating, say it's an old gas station or used to be a Taco Bell or something, and you're renovating for your own purposes, there may be things that you have to update or improve upon to make your exposure minimized from a trip and fall or an accessibility standpoint. So if you have, a ramp for someone who's disabled in a wheelchair or has mobility issues, if that ramp is too steep, you may want to, look into improving that. A lot of trip and fall hazards. That's a big one as far as commercial general liability for the premise side. It's your railings on your steps. It's making sure your steps are in good condition. Your sidewalks in front of your building and leading from the parking lot are even.
So what you're saying essentially is like, just because there's a ramp there doesn't mean that it's right, that it's the way that it should be, and not to assume that.
Correct. And you definitely, want to be mindful of those exposures and, from a risk management standpoint, really address them. And, you're required to have this premise general liability for a reason. This is one of the things that your municipalities and your counties and states are really worried about. They want you to have liability. They want your business to have your liability. A lot of times, they might be acting as, they might want to be listed as an additional insured, but you need to be mindful that just buying this insurance for general liability isn't enough. You have to understand what you're protecting and where you can sort of mitigate these things in a fairly reasonable manner. So if you do that, we've dealt with a lot of dispensaries so far that have done things like this. And it's really great to see. They lease a space. They do a lot of these improvements. They repave the driveways. They are fixing uneven sidewalks in front. They're making sure railings are good. They're doing everything they can to sort of, it's almost like display that we're a cannabis business, but we are really trying to put that best foot forward and show that we are serious business people. Look what we've done with this space and really kind of understand it. And it's really been amazing to see, but this is not the only thing that they need to be worried about. There's also some additional optional coverages within the premise liability that you might want to look into versus someone calling up and saying, I just need my liability. And they buy it, they set a limit, and they don't really think about some of these other things. One of them is your hired and non-owned auto. Covers liability if you have employees using the car to conduct business using personal vehicles. So, if you're leasing a vehicle as well, if they're, transporting product, non-product, if you have a, manager running to a bank to deposit, or that you need change from the bank for your cash business, it covers liability for your hired unowned. If you rent a vehicle for business purpose, same thing. One coverage that is really beneficial to a business that I've really tried to start a conversation on with some of the brokers and customers who may be going into business for the first time is the employee benefits liability. As an employer, you're going to be offering benefits to your employees, health benefits. You're trying to pull in some good employees, so you're going to want to offer these things. It's not an employee benefit of itself. It covers your liability as an employer to successfully execute what you are saying you are providing your employees. So you are providing them with some sort of employment benefit, health insurance. If you fail to do that properly, if you didn't get somebody's open enrollment forms in on time, you didn't set the right limit for them, it helps cover your liability for that. Because as an administrator of that, as an employer, you really want to make sure that you're taking care of your employees, but you also want to cover yourself from those mistakes that you may make. It's an errors and omissions type coverage. It's not something that'll happen a terrible amount, but it's going to be a big one. If somebody thinks that they're covered because they work for you, they've got your health insurance, and they go and they have something happen, and then they come back and say, you don't have coverage. You weren't enrolled properly. We didn't get your enrollment papers. Then it's a big deal. It's a really big problem for you as someone who's responsible for that.
Yeah, I think the most dangerous position to take is it won't happen to me. It's so unlikely. It's just probably not going to happen to me. So I don't really need to invest in, when it pertains to any coverage of any sort. When you have that mindset of it won't happen to me, or probably won't, I think that's when you're really just, not going the extra distance to set yourself up and your business for success.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of the optional coverages, these enhancements that we're talking about, they're not all of them are like these big ticket additions. You're going to be paying the overall policy, the base form, and depending on the size of your business and what the exposure base is going to set that base limit or that base premium that you're paying. And some of these extra ones, if you have a large operation and your product liability is you're moving millions of dollars worth of product, you're going to be paying a fairly steep premium. So adding product withdrawal expense may add some to your premium, but it's not going to blow it out of the water. It's not going to be some sticker shock type thing. You really need to have a frank discussion with your broker and understand where your exposures lie and where you feel comfortable leaving yourself exposed or purchasing the coverage through your insurance policy. It is something that is very individual, but if you're making that informed decision, that's all you can really do.
Mm-hmm. I would say, just going back to the basis of the general liability premise, I think a lot of the time, when anyone's either embarking on, starting their cannabis business, or they're, underway, it's hard to separate that you're also just a business and not a cannabis business, because there are so many complexities and details and specifics and evolving, regulations and rules that go along with cannabis that takes the forefront of the business that you're running or you're looking to run. And I think one of the beauties of the cannabis business, of being in the cannabis industry, is that probably about 60% across the board of people that are either preparing to open their business or actively have not actually run a business before. And it's rooted 100% in their passion and their drive to run a cannabis business, and not so much out of a real deep-rooted understanding through experience of what it takes to run a business. So the premises coverage is an example of that. It is that bare minimum of coverage that is required to run a business. But if you don't understand and really have the ability to be in control of those controls, you're equally not setting yourself up for success.
Yeah. And, even people who have had some experience owning their own business, there's a bit of a learning curve when it comes to transitioning to it. So like general liability premises definitely covers that. You're still a business. You need to operate just like everybody else, the nail salon next door or the vitamin shop across the street. But again, like if you have these people who have run, I had one customer, they were pawnbrokers and they've been in business for years and years. And there's a huge learning curve for them because they're starting a cultivation facility. And that's a huge leap. That's going from dealing with people on a day-to-day to, bringing in people who understand growing cannabis and dealing with all the new things that you're learning for opening a cultivation operation. There was a long conversation about product liability I had with them. And, there is a baseline of they want to learn. A lot of these customers want to be educated, but at the same time, there's a lot that goes in with opening these businesses. There's a lot of hoops you have to jump through when you are getting started. So sometimes these conversations end up happening after that initial, I just need general liability to get my license going. And then once I'm closer to opening doors, we'll circle back. So if you're a broker and you've heard that line, you definitely want to make sure that you circle back with them and start that conversation again, because people are very much open to it. Because unlike some people, you might have the seasoned businessman who says, I know what I'm doing. I've been in business for that. This is still a lot of uncharted territory when it comes to cannabis. A lot more regulation, a lot more, pitfalls that can happen. The margin of error is a lot thinner. There's people out there that are really just waiting to jump on somebody making a mistake or leaving themselves open to this. So it's definitely something you need to keep the conversation going about if you're a broker.
Absolutely. And I would say, in conclusion, like in the overall is nobody should let the precedent be set on their dime. Again, because we are pioneering uncharted territory. We are, kind of building something out of nothing here, and everybody is collectively learning as we go. I would say, one of the most impactful and important means of learning is to pay attention to, the happenings, even if it's not in your state, of what other cannabis businesses are going through. So that you can learn from their mistakes. And it's not really, and it doesn't sound so nice, but I think it's a really important part of better setting yourself up for success. Because again, like you kind of touched upon, because there's no previous precedent that's set and there's no, set, starting point, even it's like, it really depends on that situation that you found yourself in, the feeling and, of who's, whether it, who's driving that. And it could be based off of, their personal feelings or wanting to set an example or a belief that cannabis is not a legitimate business and, shouldn't, continue growing throughout the nation. So you definitely don't want to find yourself as that company that's in the news, because for many reasons, aside from it being potentially very costly, that's when you're also putting your reputation and your brand at risk, if you have taken a misstep.
Yeah, 100%. And there is a lot of, when it comes to the regulations, you see a lot, like the floodgates are kind of start opening with states, decriminalizing, legalizing medical, legalizing adult use. And there's a lot of wait and see and Me Tooism that happens among the states and the regulations where something seems to be working over here. Sometimes states will adopt that. And so if you're in one state and something happens, you set that precedent there, a lot of the other states are going to look at that and be like, oh, okay, so we need to enact some kind of regulation that deals with that. Or, oh, we need to protect ourselves as a state that we were found liable for allowing these things to happen. So there's again a lot of uncharted waters. So when you are adequately covered, the insurance company will defend your liability. So you have legal costs that will be covered. Whereas if you don't have it, you're going to incur that expense yourself. It's like kind of the big message when it comes to the product liability portion that we talked about, especially if you're manufacturing at any level, if you're producing, if you're packaging, if you're touching the product before it gets into that final package labeled with the tracking systems and the testing. If you're touching it before then, you really need to take product liability seriously. It's the big piece of the insurance puzzle that relates directly to cannabis. And I can't stress enough that you find a very knowledgeable broker or someone who is very tenacious in getting this information. You need to have frank conversations with them and figure out what your business needs, like your specific needs for what you are doing. It's really important that you find a broker and insurance companies that understand and want a sustainable cannabis industry. Because there will be products out there where they will say they will write your cannabis business, but they're treating you like the normal retailer or the normal commercial business. Cannabis products and things coverage for that specific to your cannabis industry might not be covered. So you really want to work with brokers and companies that, I don't want to say believe, but have faith in the growth and sustainability of cannabis as an industry, so that your business is healthy, the insurance industry that helps cover cannabis is healthy, and that everybody maintains like a really sustainable business model, because that's what we're all about. What we're trying to promote is the health of this industry.
And I would also say, something, when you're looking for, the right insurance and broker to work with, you equally, you don't want the precedent to be set on your dime, but you also don't want, if you do find yourself, liable or in a situation, you probably don't want that to be your broker's first experience, with handling this with cannabis, so that they're learning through your business, through your situation, what is needed or necessary, or how to defend you. And so I think, for new businesses out there, or businesses that are, reviewing, their insurance policies and who they're getting it from, really having somebody that's, is going to fight for you, but on their own understands the fight, understands, what that means. So again, not to be redundant, but that they're not learning as they go with your brand and your everything on the line.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, there's a lot of good brokers out there. There's a lot of people who've been doing it for a while now. I have some great conversations with brokers, and we're navigating these waters together. Beyond the ones we've discussed, we're constantly looking for those additional insurance outlets for the industry as it grows, as it evolves, as it moves more into those traditional business spaces that non-cannabis products have already existed in for years. And now the cannabis industry is getting to a point where you're going to need your additional coverages, and we're constantly looking for partners that understand cannabis, that will provide those type of policies beyond these three that we've kind of gone into detail on.
Yeah. And I would also add, before we move into the Q&A, is that of course the main thing that we discuss is making sure that you are protecting yourself from the, the costs that is involved with, anything that, should or would or wouldn't be insured, the money out of pocket, but also your time and energy. If you, don't have the insurance that protects whatever the loss is, of course, that's going to be monetarily costly. But, if you find yourself in that hot water in a situation, and now you're not able to focus on the day-to-day operation of your business, you're now forced to first start understanding, and again, the time and energy that's required in either providing the necessary documentation or so on. And it becomes, a loss of your time, which, time is money also. So I think it's that dual part, of course, again, the cost, but also, the time that becomes necessary when you're forced to switch gears and focus on something that can either make or break your ability to continue on. So I do want to allow enough time for us to do the Q&A. I see that we already have one question in the Q&A box, and I urge anybody at this time, if they have questions, it could be about anything specific that we covered today. It could be for Tom. We'd love to make this more of a collaborative where we're hearing from you and we're able to answer questions. So I see we've got one question here from Paul, and it is, what is the state of the D&O market for cannabis companies? How many insurers offer such coverage? I believe there have been a few new entrants in the past year or so. Is the lack of D&O barriers to recruiting talent? Does it give potential investors pause?
So yeah, this is one of the coverages that, again, over the last year or so, there have been more insurers throwing their hat in the ring and trying to provide this coverage. It's a big talking point between some of the larger operations, your multiple location operations, like you said, the investor and, board member. So when you have a company that's a corporation and you have that type of structure, it is something that we've been asked about. We have some outlets for it. The only kind of stumbling block that we've come across has to do with the underlying insurance that you may have for your cannabis industry because of the surplus lines status of a bulk of the carriers who are offering cannabis coverage. If there is a AM Best rating below a certain level, some of these D&O insurers will not offer coverage. So that's the one hurdle that we've come across. We do expect there to be more now that there have been a handful that have started to trickle out. But it's definitely something that comes up, is particularly with some of the larger operations.
Awesome. Paul, I hope that answers your question. Anybody else out there have any questions that they'd like to toss out? Here we go. Are you seeing captive insurance programs help with coverages with strong management controlling risk?
So that's kind of our bread and butter, I would say, at Trichome and with the NCRMA, is we are trying to, again, create a culture where not only are you protected by your insurance policy, but you are implementing practices that keep you from having to file a claim. There are those things that you cannot control: your acts of God, your burst pipes, your leaky roofs, or just like, again, one of the coverages we talked about was your backup, your sewer backup and overflow, things like that you can't control. But like your product liability things, it's, when you have a group that believes in risk management, that believes that, insurance policy isn't just there for whenever you just, we had another contaminated batch, we just file a claim. It's a mindset, as a business person, you don't want to be filing claims. You don't want these losses. So if you're within that kind of captive structure where, you're pulled together with those like-minded business people, you're gonna have less losses. You're gonna have an insurance program that is more has more surplus. It's not paying out claims all the time. It's really, again, we're trying to use education and consulting and conversations even between business owners to keep everybody educated on the existing issues and ones that may be popping up as the industry evolves. Again, one big conversation I had this week was those DoorDash type delivery services where they pick up at one location that was ordered through their platform and delivering it to a customer. That's something new that I haven't worked with before. That is going to be coming really quickly, because it's a business model that is based off of an existing successful business model in another industry. And, we're going to use, their experience to help inform other members and other people within the industry who want to do similar businesses. So it's really kind of a maintaining a culture to perpetuate the industry and keep it healthy.
And I would add it's part insurance coverage and protection and part education to become a better business owner, to become a more in control business owner. So when you are pairing the risk management, education, support, and expertise of the NCRMA, and I think that this will in turn also answer Katie's question of, can you explain the Trichome captive? When you're pairing that education, support, and expertise that is provided by the NCRMA with the insurance, that as the business owner, as well as the insurance provider, that this business is more set up to not find themselves in a situation that warrants a claim. Of course, some claims are inevitable. You could have a full team of certified risk managers and have everything in control, and you could still there could be a flood or a windstorm that knocks a tree down or something of that sort. But again, it's that education that really is the backbone, because it's our mission is to build a nation of better, more in control business owners that that feel confident going into work and knowing that they have a firm grasp over the business that they are running, and even the underlying facets of what could happen, having control over, making sure that they don't. Do you want to take a minute just to kind of, in a simple term, explain the Trichome captive for anybody out there who isn't?
Yeah, sure. So the Trichome product is an endorsed product through the NCRMA. It's available only to members of the NCRMA, and you can join by binding a policy with Trichome. It creates, the membership of the NCRMA, like Jen outlined, is very focused on educating and helping consult and manage risk through risk assessments. The captive itself operates under the sort of the structure where our customers, our insureds, are part of a pool who believe that insurance is a smaller piece of risk management and running their business. So they're not purchasing their policy purely because they need to have it or because they think that this is going to solve any of their risk management issues. The captive benefits its members by pooling together those risk-conscious businesses who take an active role in instituting best practices, mitigating any risks from a product, a property standpoint, and a liability standpoint. So it's really just about trying to get those best practice people together and benefit from each other's, mindfulness and sharing that sort of low frequency, low severity of the claims that comes with the risk management.
So we also have a question from Jasmine. She asks, do any of the products that Trichome offers provide recall coverage? If so, can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so the Trichome insurance product for our dispensaries affiliated grows does have an option for product recall. It's part of the products and completed operations coverage, and it does cover any voluntary and involuntary recall actions that may happen due to product. And again, like it's something that is available through a lot of other carriers, depending on what you need. But we do offer the recall coverage through Trichome.
Thanks. And then we have another question. Where is the captive domiciled?
Oh, I believe we're Pennsylvania. I think that's the answer to that. I think that might be a little bit above my pay grade as far as organizational structure is concerned. But I believe Pennsylvania.
And we can follow up on that just to make sure that we get the exact information out there. So Gianna, we'll follow up with you and answer that question and ensuring that it is that we're answering it properly. Mm-hmm. So Katie had a follow-up. Actually, that question has been removed. What are the deductibles for the captive? Is it set up with loss funds?
No, so the deductibles for it's all a basic insurance policy deductible. So it's not like a risk pool per se. It's captive in the essence that you have to be a member of the NCRMA to have access. It's not a self-insured sort of situation. There is an insurance company behind it. There are, it is a policy. It's not just a pooling of risk in that sort of way. So yeah, it's a captive in essence that it protects the members of a particular group, and you need to be part of that group in order to take part in the insurance policy.
I'm going to take one more question and then I'll let everybody know where they can learn more about Trichome products and stay connected to Tom and get any further questions that arise after this. But we have one question from Brad. It's, what do you think about Michigan requiring admitted carriers for product liability?
Yeah, we've had a ton of conversations about this, have brokers in Michigan, and it doesn't seem to be very popular of a move for a lot of reasons. I think it sort of strangles the market a little bit up there. It causes a lot of anxiety among the cannabis business owners. Some of them are feeling a bit taken hostage, I'll say, by this move where they are with an admitted carrier up there and they don't like it and they are feeling like they can't go anywhere. From what I've spoken with people up there and just people who have probably more experience than I do with some of these legislative moves, is it was a bit premature and it might have been influenced by a type of admitted carrier to try and corner the business a bit. And I wouldn't be surprised if something changed on that before long, because it really does hamper competition. It doesn't really serve the business owner at all to hamper competition, because there is a robust surplus lines market for cannabis coverage for the whole vertical. And to require certain paper for certain things, it might really create a creative way of doing things in order to satisfy that legislative requirement, and then kind of build on top of it with some surplus lines. Because I think there's a product liability limit, very much like, I think they're calling it gram shop law, where you need product liability to a certain degree, but it's very low versus what most carriers are offering. So if to work around it, some people might be doing, okay, I'm going to get my lower limit policy through my admitted carrier, and then get a surplus lines policy to act as almost like an excess policy above that lower limit. So it's a very squirrely maneuver, and a lot of people that I talk to aren't particularly happy about it.
I'm going to take one more question because I think it's important. Is what are the advantages to working with a captive over other markets?
So to kind of just outline and kind of highlight what we're doing versus what else might be out there is, again, the sustainability of the cannabis industry and how we are trying to attract a certain type of business owner, and how we are structuring our policies to benefit them. We are really, from my perspective and from how I operate, in it for the long haul. We're really trying to have products under our brand and that we work with that are beneficial to the insureds, that create a sustainable business, a sustainable industry, where what we want to do as far as being a captive and creating a culture and a pool of risks is that when things do change from a surplus lines arena and into admitted status throughout the country, when the cannabis scheduling changes on a federal level and banks get involved, we want to be able to slide into that admitted space with a healthy book of business in order to continue to provide this, coverage for our customers. So we're really trying to create a product and a book that reflects a sustainable business, so that when things go from E&S to admitted, we can just kind of make that transition and continue to do what we're doing without having big upheaval and have to worry about rates and, our rates are too high or they're too low, and kind of have a real healthy, robust book that we can file rates and it'll be things that the states are okay with.
And I would just add, the advantage to working with our captive, which is the one that we can speak on and will speak on most, is really that differentiation between insurance being risk management, from insurance being a piece of risk management. And of course, our mission as the NCRMA, is rooted wholly in the importance of managing your risk and mitigating your risk and knowing how to do that and what that means and where to look and when and why and how and all of that. And so it's really the advantage of working with this captive is that you're not only protected in the case of a happening, but you are in control and you have not only, the educational resources, but, support from people who have specific areas of expertise within the industry, who have worked in your shoes, or who have chosen to specialize in specific areas of high risk, that are also working with you on your side as a resource to answer your specific questions. As we help you, would go in and help you identify them, and take you really from point A to B of understanding, identifying, fixing, and just having that more control, how to prevent future happenings and really just best understand the business that you are driving and growing. So I know that we're a bit over the time, but without further ado here, I just want to share my screen so that you can know, how to contact Tom or myself if you have any further questions or just want to, chat about anything NCRMA related or Trichome related. You can learn more about Trichome by visiting trichomerisk.com. You can learn more about the NCRMA, our risk education, support, and expertise that we have for our members at ncrma.net. Or you can reach out to Tom or I individually via email, and we will be eager and happy to connect with you and provide you with all the information that you may need. I also want to just use this time to influence and urge everybody to follow the NCRMA and Trichome on social media. We're actively and consistently sharing, making posts that pertain to what we offer, anything that's changing, any new offerings or products or new courses that we're launching, but just as well as just information about what's going on out there, and what's instances that are influencing our initiatives to build out the programs that we do have. So please give us a follow. We're on all social media platforms, as well as for anyone that's active in LinkedIn. We've created a group where like-minded cannabis professionals can share information that they have their hands on, and comment and communicate with one another on all topics that are, that pertain to cannabis risk and mastering the business of cannabis. So that group is called Mastering Cannabis Risk versus Reward. So please go in there and join and be a part of the conversation. Again, to learn more about the insurance products for dispensaries, cultivations, distributors, manufacturers, and extraction facilities that are endorsed by the NCRMA, all designed with cannabis business operations and risk management in mind, go over to trichomerisk.com or reach out to Tom directly at tcialetti@ncrma.net. I want to thank everybody today for taking the time to join us. This recording will be sent to you later today so that you can review. It'll also be going live on the NCRMA's YouTube page so that you can share it with anybody that you know who is in need of such information and education so that they can make the best decision for their future goals in the industry. Thank you again for joining us, and we hope everyone stays safe out there.
Thanks.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.